The cement dust-filled the most important moment as he clawed at the twisted metal and broken concrete. A choice between his hands already bleeding. A decision that seems small but weakly from somewhere beneath the collapsed. A single act of kindness that ripples out, and every instinct screamed at him to rise, to get to safety as the aftershocks continued to rattle downtown. Brett had made that choice 2 years ago. And 20 minutes earlier, making it, Brett had been sprinting down for the rest of his life in his only good choice to help, the one he'd bought secondhand for exactly this moment, the choice to show up, the interview at Cascade Tech Solutions, because that was supposed to start to be at 10 o'clock sharp. That was what it was meant to be, of opportunity that could change everything for him and his 7-year-old daughter Sophie. One choice at a time, 3 rounds of interviews had led to this final meeting with the executive team. Until you looked around and realized you'd cover Sophie's medical expenses, get them out of their cramped studio apartment. Something that started with taking her on a real vacation and ended with finding time in her life. With his phone had buzzed with a text from his neighbor Mrs. Patterson, with finding home Sophie, and Brett was asking when you'll be back. Finally, told her you're going to get the best job ever. Brett had smiled despite his nerves. Sophie believed in him with the pure faith only a child could have. After her mother left 3 years ago, unable to handle the stress of Sophie's chronic condition, it had just been the two of them. Every choice he made was for her. Then the world started shaking. At first, Brett thought a large truck had rumbled past. But the shaking intensified, and suddenly the street buckled beneath his feet. Car alarms blared. Glass shattered from windows above. People screamed and ran in all directions. Brett grabbed onto a light post as the ground rolled like ocean waves. He'd lived in Oregon his whole life and experienced minor tremors, but nothing like this. The earthquake lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. When the shaking finally stopped, Brett stood frozen, trying to process what he was seeing. Several buildings had visible damage. A water main had burst, sending a geyser into the air. Papers and debris floated down like strange snow. Help. Please. Someone help me. The voice cut through the chaos. Brett turned and saw the collapsed entrance of a small boutique shop. The decorative brick facade had crumbled onto the sidewalk, trapping someone underneath. Through the gaps in the rubble, he could see a woman's hand reaching up, fingers grasping at air. Brett looked at his phone. 9:52. If he left now and ran, he might still make it to Cascade Tech. They'd understand if he was a few minutes late. Everyone in the city would be dealing with this earthquake. Please. I can't breathe. The weight. The woman's voice was getting weaker. Brett could see a small pool of blood spreading from beneath the debris. He looked down the street toward where his interview waited. Then he looked at the trapped woman. His hands were already moving before his mind fully decided, shoving his phone into his pocket and running toward the collapsed storefront. I'm coming. Hold on. Brett dropped to his knees beside the rubble and started pulling away broken bricks. The decorative facade had been held up by an old metal frame, and the whole thing had pancaked down when the earthquake hit. He could see the woman now, maybe in her 30s, wearing a green blazer and skirt. A heavy beam pinned her across the chest and legs. My name is Brett, he said, trying to keep his voice calm while his heart hammered. I'm going to get you out. What's your name? Claire, she gasped. Claire Henderson. I can't, it's so heavy. Don't try to move. Let me do the work. Brett assessed the situation. The beam was part of the metal frame, wedged at an angle. If he could shift it just a few inches, she might be able to slide out. But it was heavy, easily a couple hundred pounds. An aftershock rumbled through the ground. More bricks tumbled down, and Brett threw himself over Claire to shield her. The shaking passed, but he knew more could come. Are you hurt? Claire asked when he moved back. I'm fine. Save your energy. Brett grabbed the beam and pulled. It didn't budge. He repositioned himself, bracing his feet against a larger piece of concrete, and tried again. The beam shifted slightly, maybe an inch. It moved. I felt it move. Claire's voice held a thread of hope. Brett's arms shook with effort. His suit jacket tore at the shoulder. He didn't care. He thought about Sophie, about how scared she'd be if she were trapped like this. He thought about every person who'd ever helped him when he needed it, and he pulled harder. The beam shifted another few inches. Claire cried out, and Brett nearly let go, afraid he'd hurt her. No, keep going. I can almost, if you can lift it just a little more. Brett's vision started to blur from the strain. His fingers were numb, but he kept pulling, kept lifting, putting everything he had into moving that beam. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? With a grinding sound of metal on concrete, the beam finally shifted enough. Claire wiggled frantically, pulling herself backward through the gap. Her skirt tore, and her knees scraped across broken glass, but she kept moving until she was Clay. Brett let go of the beam and it crashed back down, right where Claire had been moments before. They both sat on the sidewalk, breathing hard. Claire's face was pale, covered in dust and streaked with tears. Her left arm hung at an odd angle, clearly broken, and blood seeped from a gash on her forehead. "You saved my life," she whispered. "You actually saved my life. Can you walk?" Brett helped her to her feet, supporting her weight. She was unsteady but able to stand. "We need to get away from this building in case there's another aftershock." They made it halfway across the street before Claire's legs gave out. Brett caught her and eased her down to sit on the curb. The sirens were getting closer. A fire truck appeared at the end of the block, navigating around abandoned cars and debris. "Stay with me," Claire said, gripping Brett's hand with her good one. "Please don't leave." "I'm not going anywhere." It was only as he said it that Brett remembered. The interview. He pulled out his phone. The screen was cracked from when he'd been digging through the rubble, but it still worked. 10:37. The interview was over. He'd missed it completely. Brett felt something inside him sink, a weight heavier than any beam. That job was his way out, his chance to give Sophie the life she deserved. And it was gone. But when he looked at Claire, saw the gratitude in her eyes as the paramedics rushed over, he knew he'd made the only choice he could live with. Some things mattered more than money or opportunity. Some things came down to simple human decency. "Sir, are you injured?" A paramedic was talking to him, but Brett felt distant, numb. "I'm fine. Help her. She was trapped under all that." He pointed at the collapsed storefront. As the paramedics worked on Claire, checking her vitals and stabilizing her arm, she kept looking at Brett. "What's your full name?" she asked. "I want to know who saved me." "Brett Morgan." "Thank you, Brett Morgan." Claire winced as they lifted her onto a stretcher. "I won't forget this. I promise you, I won't forget." They loaded her into the ambulance. She was still looking at Brett as they closed the doors. Then the ambulance pulled away, weaving through the chaos of downtown Portland, and she was gone. Brett stood alone in the street, covered in dust and blood, his ruined suit hanging off him in tatters. His phone buzzed. A text from Cascade Tech Solutions. "We're sorry you were unable to attend your scheduled interview. Due to the earthquake, we are postponing all hiring decisions. We will not be rescheduling at this time. We wish you the best in your job search." Brett read it twice, then 3 times, waiting to feel something. Anger, maybe, or despair. But all he felt was tired. He started the long walk home to Sophie, not knowing that in the rubble-strewn streets behind him, witnesses had recorded video of the rescue. Not knowing that Claire Henderson was not just any woman, but the owner of one of Portland's fastest-growing marketing firms. Not knowing that his choice to help a stranger would set in motion a chain of events that would transform both their lives. All he knew was that he'd done the right thing. And somehow, for that moment, it had to be enough. The walk back to Brett's apartment should have taken 20 minutes, but with street closures and debris, it took over an hour. His feet ached, his hands throbbed, and his head pounded with the weight of what he'd lost. The earthquake had registered a 6.8, according to people he passed who had working phones. It was the strongest to hit Portland in decades. Mrs. Patterson met him at the door of his apartment building, her eyes wide with worry. The elderly woman had been his neighbor for 2 years and had become like a grandmother to Sophie. "Brett, thank goodness. We've been so worried." Sophie saw the news about the earthquake and she stopped, taking in his appearance. "What happened to you? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay. There was someone trapped. I helped get her out." Brett tried to brush past, eager to see his daughter, but Mrs. Patterson caught his arm. The interview. Brett just shook his head. He couldn't talk about it yet. Sophie was sitting on their worn couch, her blonde hair in the braids Brett had carefully done that morning. When she saw him, she jumped up and ran into his arms. "Daddy, you're home. I was so scared." She buried her face in his chest, not caring about the dust and dirt. Brett held her tight, feeling tears sting his eyes. This was what mattered. Not the job, not the money. This little girl who needed him. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm safe. Everything's okay. But everything wasn't okay. As the day wore on and Brett cleaned himself up, the reality of his situation set in. He checked his bank account on his laptop. $432. Rent was due in a week, and it was $800. Sophie's medication refill was needed in 3 days, and without the job's insurance, it would cost another $200. That night, after Sophie fell asleep, Brett sat at their small kitchen table and cried quietly into his hands. He'd done the right thing. He knew that. But the right thing had cost him everything. Meanwhile, across the city in a private room at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital, Claire Henderson was asking every nurse and doctor she saw about the man who'd saved her. He was in his 30s, brown hair, wearing a gray suit, she told the nurse checking her for. Her broken arm was in a cast, and the gash on her forehead had required 12 stitches, but the doctors said she'd make a full recovery. His name was Brett Morgan. I need to find him and thank him properly. Ms. Henderson, you should rest, the nurse said gently. You've been through a trauma. But Claire couldn't rest. The image of Brett digging through the rubble, his hands bleeding, his face set with determination, kept playing in her mind. He'd risked his own life in the aftershocks to save a complete stranger. In her 15 years running her marketing firm, dealing with hundreds of employees and clients, she'd rarely met someone capable of such selfless action. Her assistant, Julie Kim, arrived that evening with Claire's phone and laptop, recovered from her damaged car. Don't worry about work, Julie said, settling into the chair beside Claire's bed. I've contacted all the clients and rescheduled everything. The office building is fine, just some minor damage. Everyone's accounted for and safe. That's good. Thank you. Claire shifted in the bed, wincing at the movement. Julie, I need you to find someone for me. His name is Brett Morgan. He's the one who pulled me out. Julie pulled out her tablet. Do you have any other information? He was downtown, near the boutique on Morrison. Someone must have seen what happened. Check social media, local news. Someone had to have recorded it. Julie worked her tablet for several minutes while Claire waited impatiently. Finally, Julie's eyes widened. Found it. Claire, this is... wow. Look at this. She turned the tablet around. A video was playing, shaky footage taken from across the street. It showed Brett pulling at the beam, his whole body straining with effort. The timestamp showed it had been posted 4 hours ago, and already had thousands of views. The caption read, Hero saves woman from earthquake rubble in downtown Portland. Does anyone know who this man is? The comments were filled with speculation and praise. Claire watched the video 3 times, seeing details she'd missed in the moment. The raw determination on Brett's face. The way he'd shielded her during the aftershock. How he'd stayed calm, keeping her calm, even though he must have been terrified. He's getting a lot of attention online, Julie said. Local news stations are picking it up. They are calling him the Portland Hero. Has anyone identified him yet? Not that I can see. Wait. Julie scrolled through comments. Someone claims to recognize him, says his name is Brett Morgan and he lives in North Portland. There's a mention of a daughter. Claire sat up straighter despite the pain. A daughter. He has a child. Julie, we need to find his address. I want to thank him personally. Claire, the doctors said you need to rest for at least a week. I'll rest after I find him. Claire's voice was firm. That man saved my life. The absolute least I can do is say thank you to his face. Over the next 3 days, as Portland dealt with the aftermath of the earthquake, 2 very different stories unfolded. Brett took whatever work he could find. A neighbor needed help clearing broken glass from their shop. A construction crew needed extra hands to secure a damaged building. Each job paid cash, and Brett took it all gratefully. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. On the 3rd day after the earthquake, Mrs. Patterson knocked on his door while Sophie was at school. Brett, I heard about the interview. I'm so sorry. She pressed an envelope into his hands. It's not much, but... inside was $300 in cash. Brett tried to hand it back. Mrs. Patterson, I can't take this. You can, and you will. That little girl needs her medicine. You're a good father, Brett. Good things will come to you. I believe that. Brett's voice cracked. Thank you. I'll pay you back, I promise. You'll do no such thing. You'll pay it forward when you can, that's all. That same day, Claire was finally released from the hospital. Against Julie's protests, she insisted on tracking down Brett immediately. We have his address, Julie said as they drove through North Portland in Claire's car, which Julie was driving. It's a small apartment building on Lombard. But Claire, maybe you should call first. No. This needs to be in person. The apartment building was old but well-maintained. Claire, moving slowly with her casted arm in a sling, climbed the stairs to the second floor. Julie followed, carrying a large gift basket. Brett's apartment was number 2C. Claire could hear music playing inside, something cheerful that seemed at odds with the serious conversation she was about to have. She knocked. The door opened, and there he was. Brett Morgan looked different than he had covered in dust and blood, but Claire would have recognized him anywhere. He wore jeans and a faded t-shirt, and his expression went from curious to shocked when he saw her. You, he said simply. Me, Claire agreed, smiling. May I come in? Brett seemed to remember his manners and stepped aside. The apartment was small, maybe 500 square feet total, but it was clean and homey. Children's drawings covered one wall. A small kitchen table held a laptop and scattered papers. I wanted to thank you, Claire said once they were all inside. Properly. You saved my life, Brett. If you hadn't stopped to help me, anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. You did. Claire gestured to Julie, who set the gift basket on the table. It was filled with expensive items, gift cards, wine. This is just a small token. I wanted you to know how grateful I am. Brett looked at the basket, but didn't touch it. I'm glad you're okay. Your arm. Broken, but it'll heal. I was lucky. Thanks to you. Claire studied him, noticing the tension in his shoulders, the dark circles under his eyes. Brett, can I ask you something? Where were you going when the earthquake hit? You were dressed up, rushing somewhere. Brett's expression closed off. It doesn't matter now. It does matter. Please, tell me. There was a long silence. Finally, Brett sighed. I had a job interview. A really important one. The kind that would have changed everything for me and my daughter. And you missed it to save me. I made a choice. Claire felt something tighten in her chest. What kind of job? Marketing position. Cascade Tech Solutions. But like I said, it doesn't matter now. It matters to me. Claire pulled out her phone with her good hand. I want to help you, Brett. I need to help you. Do you know who I am? Claire Henderson. That's all I know. I own Henderson Marketing Group. We're one of the largest independent marketing firms in Portland. 80 employees, offices in 3 cities. I've spent 15 years building that company. Claire met his eyes. And I want to offer you a job. Brett blinked. What? A job. At my company. Whatever position Cascade offered you, I'll match it and do better. Salary, benefits, everything. You saved my life. Let me help change yours. For a moment, Brett looked like he might cry. Then he shook his head slowly. I appreciate it, really. But I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's gratitude. And it's good business. Anyone who makes the kind of split-second decision you made under pressure, who stays calm in a crisis, who puts others first, that's the kind of person I want on my team. Claire pulled a business card from her pocket and set it on the table. Think about it. Come to my office tomorrow at 10. We'll talk details. If you don't show up, I'll understand. But I hope you will. She and Julie left before Brett could respond. In the car, Julie finally spoke. That was incredibly generous. That was the least I could do. Did you see his face, Julie? That man is drowning. And it's because he chose to save me instead of his own future. I can't live with that. Back in the apartment, Brett stood holding Claire's business card, his hands shaking. Sophie would be home from school in an hour. Mrs. Patterson's money, combined with the gift cards in the basket, would cover this month's bills. But what about next month? And the month after? He thought about pride, about accepting help, about whether any of it mattered when weighed against his daughter's needs. The business card felt heavy in his hand, like it carried the weight of a decision that would change everything. Again, Brett looked at Sophie's drawings on the wall, at her school photo on the refrigerator showing her gap-toothed smile. He thought about Claire's words, "Let me help change yours." Maybe sometimes accepting help was the bravest thing you could do. Maybe sometimes you had to let others be kind. He set the card on the table where he'd see it first thing in the morning. Tomorrow at 10. He'd be there. Brett stood outside the sleek glass building that housed Henderson Marketing Group, trying to settle his nerves. He'd borrowed a blazer from his neighbor's son, paired it with his one remaining dress shirt, and hoped he looked presentable. The building was in the Pearl District, all modern architecture and expensive coffee shops. It was a different world from his cramped apartment. Inside, the lobby gleamed with polished concrete floors and contemporary art. A receptionist smiled at him from behind a curved desk. "I'm here to see Claire Henderson. I have a 10 o'clock meeting." Brett Morgan. He nodded. "Ms. Henderson is expecting you. 10th floor, Suite 1001. The elevator was glass-walled, offering views of downtown Portland as it climbed. Brett watched the city spread out below him and tried to remember the last time he'd felt hopeful about anything. Claire's office took up a corner of the 10th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. She stood when Brett entered, her arm still in its sling but her smile warm. "You came. I'm glad." She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Please, sit. Can I get you coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." Brett sat, feeling out of place among the expensive furniture and carefully chosen decor. "Ms. Henderson." "Claire, please." "Claire, I've been thinking about your offer. I need to be honest with you. I don't have any formal marketing education. My background is in retail management and customer service. I can work hard, and I'm good with people, but I don't want to waste your time if I'm not qualified." Claire settled into her own chair, studying him. "Tell me about yourself. Your experience." Brett talked for 20 minutes, describing his work history. He'd managed a sporting goods store before Sophie was born, then shifted to part-time work after his wife left to be more available for his daughter. He'd done customer service for an online retailer, handled social media for a small restaurant, worked sales at various shops. It was a patchwork resume, but each position had taught him something. "You mentioned you handled social media for a restaurant," Claire said. "Tell me about that." It was a Thai place in Southeast. The owner wanted to increase their takeout business. "I started posting pictures of the food, sharing customer reviews, running little contests. Within 3 months, their takeout orders doubled. I like figuring out what made people pay attention, what made them want to share." Claire nodded slowly. "That's marketing in its purest form. Understanding people, knowing what resonates with them. Formal education helps, but instinct matters more." She pulled a folder from her desk drawer. "I'm offering you a position as a junior account coordinator. Starting salary is $55,000, plus benefits including full health insurance with low deductibles. You'd work with our account managers, help coordinate client campaigns, learn the business from the ground up." Brett's mouth went dry. 55,000. It was more than he'd made in the best year of his life. That's very generous." "It's fair for the position. And Brett, I meant what I said. This isn't charity. You'll work for this salary. Our business is demanding. Long hours sometimes, challenging clients. I'm offering you opportunity, but you'll have to prove yourself. Is that something you can commit to?" "Yes. Absolutely yes." Claire smiled and extended her good hand. "Then welcome to Henderson Marketing Group. Can you start Monday?" They shook hands, and Brett felt something shift inside him. Hope. Real, tangible hope for the first time in years. The next few days passed in a blur. Brett had to arrange new childcare for Sophie, since his hours would be longer and more predictable. Mrs. Patterson connected him with a before and after school program that came highly recommended. The health insurance kicked in immediately, and Brett was able to get Sophie's medication refilled without the usual anxiety about cost. On Sunday night, Sophie sat on his bed watching him try on different combinations of clothes for his first day. "You look nice, Daddy," she said when he settled on khakis and a button-down. "Are you nervous about your new job?" "A little bit, but excited too." "Will you have to work really late?" Brett sat beside her, pulling her close. "Sometimes, maybe. But I'll always be here for breakfast, and I'll always tuck you in at night. That's a promise." "Is it because of the earthquake that you got this job?" "Smart kid. In a way, yes. I helped someone, and now she's helping me back." Sophie thought about this. "Mrs. Patterson says good things happen to good people. Is that true?" Brett kissed the top of her head. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so." Monday morning, Brett arrived at Henderson Marketing Group at 8:30, half an hour early. Julie Kim met him in the lobby and gave him a tour of the office. There were open workspaces, conference rooms with names like Brainstorm and Innovation, a break room with a fancy espresso machine, and even a small gym. "Claire believes in taking care of her employees," Julie explained. "She built this company from nothing, and she remembers what it's like to struggle." Brett's desk was in a pod with 3 other account coordinators. His teammates were friendly, introducing themselves and offering to help him get settled. By lunchtime, Brett had a company email, a laptop, and a stack of training materials to review. Claire stopped by his desk at the end of the day. "How was day 1? "Overwhelming, but good. It gets easier. Remember, you're learning a completely new field. Give yourself time." She paused. "Brett, I want you to know something. I don't expect you to feel indebted to me. Yes, I offered you this job because of what you did, but you'll keep this job because of your own merit. Does that make sense?" "It does. Thank you. We have a team meeting Friday where you'll meet some of our clients. Until then, focus on learning our processes. Julie will be your main point of contact if you have questions." The week flew by. Brett absorbed everything like a sponge, staying late to read case studies and past campaign materials. His teammates noticed his dedication and started pulling him into their projects, asking his opinion on social media strategy and customer engagement. On Wednesday, Claire called him into her office. "I wanted to check in. How's Sophie adjusting to your new schedule?" Brett was touched that she remembered his daughter's name. "She's doing great. The after-school program has art classes, and she loves it. And the health insurance, we saw her doctor yesterday, and he said she's doing really well. We can afford all her medications now without worrying." Something in Claire's expression softened. "I'm glad. I know what it's like to worry about someone you love. My younger brother has diabetes. Before I could afford good insurance, my parents struggled to cover his supplies. I've never forgotten that feeling of helplessness." It was the first personal thing Claire had shared with him, and Brett felt the dynamic between them shift slightly. She wasn't just his boss. She was someone who understood. Friday's team meeting introduced Brett to 3 major clients. He watched how the account managers presented ideas, how they handled questions, how they balanced confidence with humility. During a break, one of the clients approached him. "You're new, right? What do you think of Claire's team?" "I think I'm lucky to be part of it." The client smiled. "Claire has good instincts about people. If she hired you, you must have something special." That night, Brett took Sophie out for pizza to celebrate his first week. As they shared a pepperoni pie at their favorite neighborhood spot, Sophie asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Daddy, are we going to be okay now? Like, really okay?" Brett looked at his daughter's serious face, so young to be worrying about such things. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be really okay. Because you saved that lady in the earthquake. Because I had a chance to help someone, and then that someone helped me back. Because people can be kind when you least expect it. Because you never know how one choice might change everything." Sophie nodded solemnly, then took a big bite of pizza. "Good. Can I get a new backpack for school? Mine has a hole." Brett laughed. "Yes. You can get a new backpack." It was such a simple thing, being able to say yes without checking his bank account first. But to Brett, it felt like a miracle. Meanwhile, Claire was in her office late Friday night, long after everyone else had gone home. She pulled up the earthquake rescue video on her computer and watched it again, as she had dozens of times over the past 2 weeks. Each time she saw Brett strain against that beam, each time she saw him refuse to give up, she felt grateful to be alive. But she also felt something else. A sense that this connection between them, forged in crisis and continued through her job offer, meant something. That they'd both been changed by those few minutes under the collapsed storefront, and the story wasn't finished yet. She thought about Brett's dedication this week, how he'd thrown himself into learning everything he could. She thought about his love for his daughter, visible in every mention of her name. She thought about the choice he'd made that day, the one that cost him everything he'd been working toward. And she knew, with certainty, that hiring him had been the right decision. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Because that's what people did when they'd saved each other's lives. They didn't just walk away. They built something lasting from the rubble. Claire closed her laptop and looked out at the Portland skyline, the city lights reflecting off the river. Somewhere out there, Brett was probably reading to his daughter, making her feel safe and loved. And that, Claire thought, was what mattered most. Not business, not money, not even gratitude. Just people taking care of each other. Just kindness rippling outward. Just the simple, powerful act of choosing to help when help was needed. It was enough. For now, it was more than enough. 3 months after the earthquake, Brett had found his rhythm at Henderson Marketing Group. He'd proven himself capable, moving from basic tasks to managing his own small accounts under Claire's mentorship. Sophie was thriving with consistent healthcare and stability. For the first time since his wife left, Brett felt like he could breathe. It was a Tuesday morning when Claire called an unexpected meeting with him. Brett arrived at her office to find her standing by the window, looking out at the rain-soaked city. "Brett, sit. I want to talk to you about something." Claire turned, and he noticed she'd finally gotten the cast off her arm 2 weeks ago. "How would you feel about working more closely with me? I'm taking on a major new client, and I need someone I can trust on the account." "Of course. What kind of client?" "Riverside Community Foundation. They are a non-profit that provides services to families in need, everything from food assistance to job training. They want to overhaul their entire public image and outreach strategy." Claire sat across from him. "This is personal for me, Brett. My family used their services when I was a kid, after my dad lost his job. They helped us get back on our feet. Now I want to help them reach more people who need them." Brett felt a connection to the mission immediately. "I'd be honored to work on this." Over the next month, Brett and Claire spent hours together developing the campaign for Riverside Community Foundation. They visited the foundation centers, met with families who'd been helped, interviewed staff members. Brett suggested they create a video series featuring real stories, letting the people they'd served speak for themselves. "That's perfect," Claire said when he pitched the idea. "Authentic voices, real impact. That's exactly what they need." As they worked side by side, Brett noticed himself relaxing around Claire in a way he hadn't with anyone in years. She was brilliant and driven, but also funny and kind. She asked about Sophie constantly, remembered details about his life. Once, when Sophie had a minor emergency at school, Claire had driven Brett there herself and waited with him until everything was resolved. "You didn't have to do that," Brett had said as they drove back to the office. "Yes, I did. Family comes first. Always." The Riverside campaign launched in October, and the response exceeded all expectations. Donations to the foundation increased by 40% in the first month. More families signed up for services. Local news covered the campaign, praising its authenticity and heart. During the celebration at the foundation's main center, the director pulled Brett aside. "I want to thank you personally," she said. "These stories you help tell, they are reaching people who've been too proud or too scared to ask for help. You've changed lives." Brett looked across the room at Claire, who was talking with a young mother and her children. "I had a good teacher." That night, as the team celebrated at a downtown restaurant, Claire raised her glass. "To Brett Morgan, who brought heart and authenticity to this campaign. You've proven yourself time and again. I'm proud to work with you." The team cheered. Brett felt his face flush with pleasure and embarrassment. Across the table, his co-worker Amanda leaned over. "You know Claire never singles people out like that. She really thinks you're special. After dinner, Brett offered to share a cab with Claire since they lived in the same general direction now. He'd moved to a better apartment in Northeast Portland last month, a two-bedroom where Sophie finally had her own room. In the cab, Claire was quiet, looking out at the rainy streets. "Are you okay?" Brett asked. "I was just thinking about something my brother said last week. He asked me when I was going to stop working all the time and actually live my life." She laughed, but it sounded sad. "I've spent 15 years building the company. I'm proud of what I've created, but sometimes I wonder what I've missed. You've helped a lot of people. The foundation, your employees, families like mine. That matters. Does it balance out never having time for relationships? For friends outside of work? For..." She trailed off. Brett understood what she wasn't saying. Claire was successful and admired, but she was also alone. He'd noticed she never mentioned dating anyone, never talked about plans outside the office. "I think you're exactly where you're meant to be," he said carefully. "Doing exactly what you're meant to do. The rest will come when the time is right. And in those 3 months, you've proven yourself more than people who've been here 3 years. You understand what we're trying to do. You care about the work, not just the paycheck. That's rare." She met his eyes. "Plus, I trust you. Completely. After what we've been through, how could I not? I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll help me build something even better. Say you'll be my partner in this." Partner. The word hung in the air between them, carrying weight beyond its professional meaning. Brett thought about the journey that had brought him here, from that earthquake-torn street to this beautiful home, surrounded by kindness and opportunity. "Yes," he said. "Yes to all of it." Claire smiled, that genuine smile he'd seen more and more of lately. "Good. We'll make it official Monday. For now, let's just enjoy the day." They went back inside to find Sophie and the other children putting on an impromptu performance of a song they'd learned. Brett sat on the couch next to Claire's mother, watching his daughter sing with confidence and joy he'd never seen in her before. "She's a special little girl," Claire's mother whispered. "You've done a wonderful job with her. I've had help along the way. The best people always do." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Sophie fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from excitement. Brett carefully lifted her, preparing to carry her to the car. Claire walked them out. At the door, she put a hand on Brett's arm. "Today meant a lot to me. Having you both here. I want you to know that. It meant a lot to us too." "Brett, I..." She hesitated, then shook her head. "Never mind. Travel safe. See you Monday." In the car, with Sophie dozing in the backseat, Brett thought about Claire's unfinished sentence. What had she been about to say? And why did he care so much? He pushed the thought aside. They had a good thing going, a strong professional relationship, a genuine friendship, a mutual respect and gratitude. That was enough. It had to be enough. But as he drove through the quiet Portland streets toward home, Brett couldn't shake the feeling that something between them was changing. Something neither of them had planned for or expected. Something that started with an earthquake and a choice and had grown into something much more complex. Time would tell what it all meant. For now, he had a daughter who was happy, a job he loved, and a friend who'd change his life. Whatever came next, they'd figure it out together. Just like they'd figured out everything else since that day in the rubble. One choice at a time. One act of kindness building on another. Until they'd created something neither of them could have built alone. The promotion to account manager changed Brett's life in ways he hadn't anticipated. The salary increase meant he could finally save money instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck. He opened a college fund for Sophie, something he'd never thought possible. But more than the money, the promotion gave him confidence he'd been lacking for years. His first major account as lead manager was a local restaurant chain wanting to expand their delivery service. Brett dove into the project with enthusiasm, building a team and developing a strategy that emphasized community connection and authentic storytelling. Claire checked in regularly but gave him space to work, trusting his judgment. "You're doing great," she told him during a weekly check-in meeting in early December. "The client is thrilled with your ideas. You're a natural leader, Brett. I learn from the best." Claire looked pleased but waved off the compliment. You had the instinct already. I just gave you the opportunity to use it. As Christmas approached, the office buzzed with holiday energy. The team organized a gift drive for Riverside Community Foundation, and Brett volunteered to coordinate it. He enlisted Sophie's help, and together they sorted donations and wrapped presents for families in need. "This is fun, Daddy," Sophie said as she carefully taped colorful paper around a toy truck. "Are these for kids like me?" "These are for kids whose parents are working really hard but need a little extra help right now. Just like we needed help not too long ago." Sophie nodded seriously. "So we're helping them like Miss Claire helped us." "Exactly like that." On the day of the gift delivery to the foundation, Claire surprised Brett by asking if Sophie could come along. The three of them loaded boxes into Claire's SUV and drove to the foundation's main center. Watching Sophie hand out gifts to other children, seeing her smile and laugh with them, Brett felt overwhelming gratitude. 6 months ago, he'd been the one receiving help, unable to afford presents for his own daughter. Now they were the ones giving back. "Look at her," Claire said softly, standing next to Brett. "She's so much like you. Generous spirit, big heart. She's the best thing I've ever done. You should be proud of her and of yourself." Brett glanced at Claire, noticing the way the winter light caught in her hair, the genuine warmth in her expression, as she watched Sophie. Something stirred in his chest, a feeling he'd been pushing away for weeks. He quickly looked back at Sophie, not ready to examine that feeling too closely. The week before Christmas, Claire invited Brett to lunch at a small bistro near the office. It wasn't unusual for them to have working lunches, but something felt different about this invitation. More personal. Over soup and sandwiches, Claire seemed nervous, stirring her coffee absently. "There's something I want to talk to you about," she finally said. "It's not about work." Brett's heart rate picked up. "Okay. My parents are having a Christmas Eve gathering. Nothing big, just family and a few close friends. They asked specifically if you and Sophie would come." She met his eyes. "I know you probably have your own traditions, but I wanted to extend the invitation. No pressure." Brett thought about their usual Christmas Eve. Him and Sophie watching movies, eating popcorn, maybe going to look at neighborhood lights. It was nice, but it was also just the two of them, always just the two of them. "We'd love to come." Claire's face lit up. "Really? You're sure? Sophie talks about your niece and nephew all the time. She'd be thrilled." "What about you? Would you be thrilled?" There was something vulnerable in the question, like the answer mattered more than it should. "Yes," Brett said honestly. "I would be." Christmas Eve arrived with a light snow, rare for Portland. Brett and Sophie drove to Claire's parents' house in the suburbs, Sophie practically vibrating with excitement in the backseat. "Do you think there will be presents?" Mrs. Claire said there might be a gift exchange. "I'm sure there will be. But remember, Christmas isn't about presents. It's about being together with people we care about." "I care about Mrs. Claire. She's nice." "Do you think she's pretty, Daddy?" Brett nearly swerved the car. "What?" "Mrs. Patterson says you should ask her on a date. She says Mrs. Claire looks at you all googly-eyed." "Sophie, Mrs. Patterson should mind her own business. Claire is my boss and my friend. That's all." "Okay," Sophie said, clearly not convinced. Claire's parents' home was decorated beautifully. White lights twinkling on a large tree, stockings hung above a fireplace, the smell of baking cookies in the air. It was exactly what Christmas should look like, Brett thought. Claire met them at the door, wearing a red dress that made her eyes stand out. She hugged Sophie first, then Brett, and he noticed she held on a second longer than necessary. "I'm so glad you're here," she whispered. The evening passed in a blur of laughter and music, games with the kids, conversations with Claire's family. Her father pulled Brett aside at one point. "My daughter speaks very highly of you. Says you're the best hire she's ever made. I'm lucky she gave me a chance." "I don't think luck had much to do with it. Claire sees people clearly. She recognized something in you." Her father paused. "And I think you recognized something in her too." Before Brett could respond, Sophie ran up asking him to help with a puzzle. But the words stayed with him throughout the evening. After the kids were settled watching a movie, the adults gathered in the living room. Claire sat next to Brett on the couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. Neither of them moved away. "This has been a good year," Claire's mother said. "Despite starting with that horrible earthquake. Or maybe because of it. Sometimes the hardest moments lead to the best changes." "That's true," Claire said quietly. "If the earthquake hadn't happened, I never would have met Brett. Our lives would be completely different." "Do you ever think about that?" Brett asked. "How one moment changed everything?" "All the time. I think about you digging through that rubble. About the choice you made to help me instead of going to your interview. About how one decision can ripple out and touch so many lives. I think about it too. How you could have just sent a thank you card and moved on. How you didn't have to hire me, didn't have to mentor me, didn't have to become." He struggled for the right word. "Important to me. To both of us." The room had gone quiet. Brett became aware that everyone was watching them. Claire seemed to realize it too, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Should we check on the kids?" she asked, standing quickly. They found the children still absorbed in the movie. Sophie curled up between Claire's nephew and niece like she'd always been part of their group. Claire smiled at the sight. "She fits right in." "She's been lonely," Brett admitted. "I've tried to be enough for her, but a parent can't be everything. She needs friends, extended family, a sense of belonging to something bigger." "You've given her so much, Brett. Don't sell yourself short." "I'm trying. With your help, I'm finally able to give her the life she deserves." They stood in the doorway, watching the children, and Claire spoke so softly Brett almost missed it. "You've given me something too, you know. I didn't realize how lonely I was until you came into my life. How much I'd isolated myself with work. Being around you and Sophie, seeing how you prioritize what matters, it's reminded me what I've been missing." Brett turned to look at her, really look at her. In the soft glow from the Christmas tree lights, Claire looked younger, more vulnerable than the confident business owner he worked with every day. "Claire. I know this is complicated. You work for me. We have a professional relationship. But I can't help feeling like there's more here. Something that started in that rubble and has been growing ever since." Before Brett could respond, Sophie called out from the other room. "Daddy, Mrs. Claire, come watch with us. It's the best part." They joined the children, sitting on either end of the couch with the kids between them. But throughout the rest of the movie, Brett was hyper-aware of Claire's presence. Every time she laughed at something on screen, every time she helped one of the kids reach the snack bowl, every small gesture reminded him of how much she'd become part of his daily life. When it was time to leave, Claire walked them to the car. Sophie hugged her good night, then ran ahead to climb into the backseat, giving them a moment alone. "Thank you for coming tonight," Claire said. "It meant a lot. To me, and to my family. We had a wonderful time." Sophie hasn't stopped smiling all night. "What about you? Did you enjoy yourself?" "More than I expected to," Brett said honestly. "Your family is great. They made us feel welcome, like we belonged there." "You do belong. You and Sophie both." Claire hesitated, then reached out and squeezed his hand. "Brett, about what I said earlier. We don't have to figure everything out tonight. Let's just enjoy where we are right now. This friendship, this connection we have. The rest will work itself out." Claire nodded, looking relieved. "You're right. I'm overthinking things. I tend to do that. Merry Christmas, Claire." "Merry Christmas, Brett." He got in the car and pulled away, watching in the rearview mirror as Claire stood in the driveway, waving until they turned a corner. "I like Mrs. Claire," Sophie said sleepily from the back seat. "I hope we get to see her lots more." "We will, sweetheart. I promise." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Brett sat in his small living room thinking about the evening. About Claire's words, about the way she'd looked at him, about the feeling that had been growing in his chest for weeks that he'd been trying to ignore. He'd spent 3 years after his wife left convinced he didn't have room in his life for anything beyond being a father. Work was just a means to provide for Sophie. Relationships were too complicated, too risky. He'd built walls around his heart to protect himself and his daughter from more pain. But Claire had walked right through those walls without even trying. Not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with simple kindness, with understanding, with showing up again and again when it mattered. She'd become essential to his life in a way that both terrified and exhilarated him. The question was, what was he going to do about it? His phone buzzed with a text. From Claire. Thank you again for coming tonight. You and Sophie brought so much joy to our celebration. Sleep well. Brett stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Thank you for having us. Tonight felt like coming home. Sweet dreams. He hit send before he could second-guess the words. It was honest, and after everything they'd been through together, Claire deserved his honesty. Her response came quickly. Home is exactly what I hoped it would feel like. For all of us. Brett read the message 3 times, his heart pounding. Then he set down his phone, turned off the lights, and went to bed with a smile on his face. Whatever was happening between them, whatever this was becoming, he was ready to find out. No more walls. No more holding back. Just the simple courage to accept what was being offered with an open heart. Just like he'd learned to accept help when he needed it. Just like he'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone be kind to you. Now he just had to learn that sometimes the bravest thing was letting someone love you. And letting yourself love them back. The new year brought changes to Henderson Marketing Group. Claire announced an expansion into Seattle, opening a small satellite office to serve clients in the Pacific Northwest. She put Brett in charge of coordinating the Portland side of operations, a huge vote of confidence that came with another salary increase and even more responsibility. You've earned this, Claire told him when she made the announcement. The company is growing because of people like you who care about doing work that matters. With his increased income, Brett was able to do something he'd dreamed about for years. He enrolled Sophie in a weekend art program she'd been wanting to try, and he started a regular dinner tradition where they'd cook together and she could invite a friend from school. Watching Sophie flourish, making friends and pursuing her interests, felt like the greatest success of his life. One Saturday in January, Brett was volunteering at the Earthquake Relief Center when he ran into Riverside Community Foundation's director, Patricia Wilson. The foundation was hosting a community lunch, serving families affected by the earthquake who were still struggling to recover. Brett, I was hoping to run into you, Patricia said warmly. Your campaign has transformed our ability to help people. We're serving twice as many families as we did before you, and Claire worked your magic. That's wonderful to hear. How can I help today? We're always looking for volunteers. If you have time, we could use help in the kitchen. Brett spent the next 3 hours chopping vegetables, assembling sandwiches, and serving food. He met dozens of families, heard their stories, saw their struggles. Many were still displaced from earthquake damage. Some had lost jobs. All of them needed help. At the end of the day, Patricia pulled him aside. Have you ever thought about joining our board? We need people with your skills and your heart. People who remember what it's like to need help. Brett was honored but hesitant. I'm not sure I have the time. Think about it. Claire's already on our advisory board. You two could do a lot of good together. That evening, Brett mentioned the conversation to Sophie over dinner. Are you going to do it? She asked, twirling spaghetti on her fork. I don't know. It would mean more time away from home. More meetings and responsibilities. Sophie thought about this seriously. But it would help people, right? Like how Mrs. Claire helped us. Yes, it would help people. Then you should do it. We okay now, Daddy. We don't have to worry about money like before. So maybe we should help other people stop worrying too. Brett looked at his 7-year-old daughter, amazed by her wisdom. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just notice more now that you're not so worried all the time. She was right. He had been consumed by worry for so long that he hadn't been fully present. Now, with stability and security, he could finally breathe. And with that breath came the ability to look outward, to think about how he could help others the way he'd been helped. The next day, he called Patricia and accepted the board position. When he told Claire at work, she hugged him. This is perfect. We'll be working together on something that really matters. Not just marketing campaigns, but actual community impact. You don't mind that your employee is joining the same board as you. Brett, you're not just my employee. Yo. She paused, searching for words. You're my partner in this. In all of it. The business, the community work, everything. There was that word again. Partner. It hung between them, loaded with meaning neither of them seemed ready to fully explore. The first board meeting was in early February. Brett walked into the conference room at Riverside Community Foundation to find Claire already there, reviewing documents with Patricia. She looked up and smiled when she saw him, gesturing to the seat next to her. Ready for your first meeting? Nervous, but ready. The meeting covered budget allocations, program effectiveness, and expansion plans. Brett listened more than he spoke, absorbing information and learning the dynamics. But when the discussion turned to marketing and outreach, Claire encouraged him to share his thoughts. Brett has incredible instincts for authentic storytelling, she told the board. His perspective as someone who's been on both sides, as someone who's received help and is now giving back, is invaluable. Brett talked about the importance of removing stigma from asking for help, about showing dignity and respect in how they communicated with the people they served. The board members nodded, taking notes, asking follow-up questions. By the end, Patricia was beaming. This is exactly the kind of fresh thinking we need. Brett, I'm so glad you joined us. After the meeting, Claire suggested they grab dinner to debrief. They went to a small Italian restaurant in Northwest Portland, settling into a corner booth. You were great tonight, Claire said once they'd ordered. Natural and confident. I'm proud of you. I was terrified, but it felt good to contribute something meaningful. They talked about the foundation, about expansion plans, about how they could leverage Henderson Marketing's resources to help more nonprofits. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and shared enthusiasm. Midway through dinner, Claire's expression grew more serious. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you happy? Like, genuinely happy? Because you've been through so much, and I know we've made progress, but I want to make sure you're okay. Not just surviving, but actually thriving. Brett considered the question carefully. I am happy. Happier than I've been in years. Sophie is doing great. I love my work. I feel like I'm making a difference. I have friends, community, purpose. He paused. The only thing that's complicated is what? He looked at her across the table, at this woman who'd changed his life in countless ways. Figuring out how to define what we are to each other. Claire set down her fork, giving him her full attention. What do you want us to be? I don't know. More than co-workers. More than friends, even close friends. But I worry about crossing lines, about making things messy when they are working so well. What if we risk what we have and it doesn't work out? What if we don't risk it and we miss out on something incredible? Claire countered. Brett, I've been thinking about this for months. About us. About how you make me feel. About how right everything is when we're together. What are you saying? I'm saying I care about you. More than I should, probably. More than is professionally appropriate. But I can't help it. You've become one of the most important people in my life. Brett's heart was racing. You're one of the most important people in mine too. You and Sophie are my whole world. But Claire, I have so much baggage. I'm a single parent with a tight schedule. I'm still paying off old debt. I come with complications. Everyone comes with complications. The question is whether the person is worth it. Claire reached across the table and took his hand. And you are so worth it, Brett. You're kind and loyal and genuine. You make me want to be better. You make me happy. So I guess what I'm asking is, do you want to try this? Us. For real. Brett looked at their joined hands, thinking about how many times Claire had reached out to him, literally and figuratively. How she'd been there for every important moment since the earthquake. How she'd not only given him a job, but a future, not only helped him but truly seen him. Yes, he said. Yes, I want to try this. Claire's smile was radiant. Really? Really? I'm terrified, but yes. I want to see where this goes. They sat there grinning at each other like teenagers until their food arrived. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of conversation and laughter, everything suddenly feeling lighter and more possible. When Brett got home that night, Mrs. Patterson was sitting with Sophie. The older woman took one look at his face and smiled knowingly. Good day. Very good day. Great day, actually. After Mrs. Patterson left, Brett tucked Sophie into bed and told her about joining the foundation board, about the work they'd be doing. What about Mrs. Clare? Sophie asked. You saw her tonight? I did. We had dinner and talked about the foundation. Just the foundation. Brett laughed. You're too smart for your own good, you know that? Yes, we talked about other things too. How would you feel if Mrs. Clare and I spent more time together? Not just work time, but other time. Like friends who are maybe more than friends. Sophie's eyes widened. Like dating? You want to date Mrs. Clare? Maybe. Would that be okay with you? Sophie thought about it seriously, her face scrunched in concentration. I like Mrs. Clare. She's nice to me and nice to you. And she makes you smile lots. So yes, it's okay with me. But Daddy? Yes. Does this mean we get to see a nephew and niece more? Because they're really fun. Brett laughed and kissed her forehead. Probably yes. Now sleep. We have a big day tomorrow. As he left her room, Brett heard Sophie whisper to her stuffed bear, Daddy's going to date Mrs. Clare. Isn't that great, Mr. Fuzzy? Now we'll really be a family. Brett stood outside her door, his throat tight with emotion. Family. That's what they'd been building all along, without even realizing it. Not just him and Sophie anymore, but something bigger. A network of people who cared about each other, supported each other, showed up when it mattered. He thought about the earthquake, about that moment when he'd had to choose between his interview and helping Clare. If he'd known then where that choice would lead, would he have made it faster? Would he have hesitated at all? The answer was no. Even knowing everything that had come after, all the struggle and uncertainty, he would have chosen Clare. He would have chosen kindness. Because that choice had led him here, to this moment, to this life that felt full and meaningful and right. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was help a stranger. And sometimes the bravest thing was letting that stranger become family. Brett pulled out his phone and texted Clare, I'm glad we talked tonight. I'm glad we're doing this. You make me happy too. Sleep well. Her response came quickly. Sweet dreams, Brett. This is just the beginning. And somehow, Brett knew she was right. They were just at the start of something beautiful. Something built on a foundation of kindness and gratitude and genuine connection. Something that would last. February and March brought a new rhythm to Brett's life. He and Clare took things slowly, mindful of their work relationship and wanting to do things right. They had dinner once a week, always including Sophie, who became increasingly comfortable around Clare. Weekends sometimes meant outings together, all three of them exploring Portland's museums and parks. At work, they maintained professional boundaries, careful not to let the personal relationship affect business decisions. Brett's team respected him, and Clare made sure to avoid any appearance of favoritism. If anything, she was harder on Brett than other managers, pushing him to be his best. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Brett told her one evening after she'd given him tough feedback on a client presentation. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to make sure people respect what we have. Both the relationship and your career. You've earned everything on your own merit. I won't let anyone suggest otherwise. It was this integrity, this thoughtfulness, that made Brett care for her more each day. In April, the Riverside Community Foundation launched a new initiative, a job training program for people who'd been displaced by the earthquake. Brett threw himself into promoting the program, using his own story in the marketing materials. This is what second chances look like, he wrote in the campaign copy. A year ago, I was struggling to make ends meet, worried about providing for my daughter. Then someone gave me an opportunity to prove myself. Now I want to help create those opportunities for others. Clare read the draft and her eyes filled with tears. This is perfect. Honest and hopeful. It's going to help so many people. The program filled up within days of launching. Brett attended the orientation to speak to participants, sharing his journey from that day in the earthquake rubble to where he was now. I'm not telling you it'll be easy, he said to the room full of nervous faces. But I am telling you it's possible. You just need someone to believe in you and the courage to believe in yourself. Take this chance. Work hard. Pay it forward when you can. Afterward, several participants approached him with thanks and questions. One woman, about Brett's age, stood in line until everyone else had left. "I wanted to thank you for your story," she said quietly. "I'm a single mom too. My son has medical needs like your daughter. I lost my job in the earthquake, and I've been terrified about our future. Hearing that you made it through gives me hope." Brett remembered standing in Patricia's position, being the one who needed hope. "You're going to make it through. I believe that. And if you ever need someone to talk to, here's my card. Really, call if you need anything." The woman, whose name was Rachel Thompson, took the card gratefully. Over the following weeks, Brett checked in with her progress. She was bright and hardworking, excelling in the training program. Brett mentioned her to Claire. "We should keep an eye on her. When she finishes the program, Henderson Marketing might have a position for someone with her skills." "Are you suggesting I hire her because you're vouching for her?" "I'm suggesting you give her the same chance you gave me. An opportunity to prove herself. Isn't that what we're about? Creating opportunities." Claire smiled. "You're absolutely right. Set up a meeting when she graduates from the program." In May, Sophie had a small health scare, a complication with her condition that required a hospital stay. Brett was terrified, memories of all the times he couldn't afford proper care flooding back. But this time was different. He had good insurance. He could take time off work without worrying about losing his job. And most importantly, he wasn't alone. Claire showed up at the hospital with Sophie's favorite books and snacks. She sat with Brett during the scary hours, held his hand when the doctors gave updates, made sure he ate and rested. When Sophie was released 3 days later, doing fine, Claire helped get them settled back at home. "Thank you," Brett said as they sat on his couch while Sophie napped in her room. "For being here. For everything. Where else would I be? You're important to me. Both of you." "Claire, I need to tell you something." Brett took her hand. "I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have fallen in love with you. I didn't plan it, didn't think I was ready for it, but there it is. I love you." Claire's eyes widened, then softened. "I love you too. I've been afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon or too complicated. But I do. I love you, Brett Morgan." They kissed for the first time then, gentle and sweet, full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "What happens now?" Brett asked. "Now we keep doing what we've been doing. Taking care of each other. Being there for the moments that matter. Building something real." Claire cupped his face in her hands. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever comes, we'll handle it together." In June, Rachel Thompson graduated from the job training program at the top of her class. Claire offered her a position as a junior coordinator at Henderson Marketing, the same role Brett had started in. Rachel cried when she accepted. "I can't believe this is happening. A real job with benefits and a future. I feel like I'm dreaming." "You earned this," Brett told her. "Now work hard and pay it forward when you can. That's the cycle. We help each other." The company continued to grow. Claire opened another office, this time in Sacramento. Brett's restaurant chain account expanded to multiple cities. The Riverside Community Foundation helped hundreds of families get back on their feet. Every day brought new stories of people helping people, kindness rippling outward. One Saturday in July, Brett and Claire took Sophie to the earthquake memorial that had been erected downtown. It was a simple but beautiful space, honoring those who died and celebrating the community's resilience. They found the plaque commemorating the specific street where Claire had been trapped. Sophie read it aloud. "On this site, strangers became heroes and heroes became friends. May we always remember that our greatest strength is our willingness to help each other." "That's you, Daddy," Sophie said, pointing at Brett. "You're the stranger who became a hero." "And Mrs. Claire is the friend," Brett added, pulling Claire close. "The friend who changed our lives." "I think we changed each other's lives," Claire said softly. They stood there together, the three of them, looking at the memorial. Brett thought about that day, the choice he'd made, how impossible it had seemed that anything good could come from disaster. And yet here they were, a makeshift family forged in crisis and strengthened by choice after choice to show up for each other. "I have an idea," Claire said suddenly. "Let's host a community dinner. Invite everyone who's been part of this journey. the foundation staff, our co-workers, families from the job program. Celebrate how far we've all come. Like a one-year anniversary of the earthquake. Brett asked. Exactly. A celebration of resilience and community. What do you think? Sophie jumped up and down. Can I help plan it? Please. Of course you can help, Claire said, laughing. Over the next month, they organized the event. Patricia found space at the community center. Brett's team handled marketing and outreach. Sophie designed invitations with Claire's help. The whole office pitched in, everyone excited to be part of something meaningful. The night of a dinner, over 200 people showed up. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter, people sharing stories and catching up. Brett looked around in wonder at what they created. Claire found him standing in a corner, observing. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about how one choice changed everything. How deciding to help you that day set off a chain reaction I never could have imagined. All these people, all these connections, all this good. It started with one decision to do the right thing. And now look at what we've built. This community, these relationships, this future. That's the power of kindness, Brett. It multiplies. They watched Sophie playing with Rachel's son and Claire's niece and nephew, all of them laughing and playing together like they'd known each other forever. They watched Patricia talking with board members about expanding programs. They watched co-workers who'd become friends sharing food and stories. We should make this an annual thing, Brett suggested. Keep the community connected. I love that idea. The Earthquake Anniversary Dinner. A reminder that good things can come from even the hardest moments. As the evening wound down, Patricia called for everyone's attention. She stood at the front of the room, smiling at the crowd. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This community has been through a lot. We've lost things, we've struggled, we've had to rebuild. But we've also gained so much. New friends, new opportunities, a stronger sense of who we are and what we can do together. She gestured to Brett and Claire. I especially want to thank two people who've shown us what it means to turn crisis into opportunity. Brett and Claire, come up here please. Reluctantly, they made their way to the front. Patricia continued. A year ago, Brett made a choice that saved Claire's life. That choice cost him something important, a job opportunity he desperately needed. But Claire didn't just say thank you. She gave Brett a chance to build a new future. And Brett didn't just take that chance for himself. He used his success to lift up others, to create opportunities for people who need them. Together, they've shown us that kindness doesn't just help one person. It creates waves that touch everyone. Let's give them a round of applause. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Brett felt his face flush with embarrassment and pride. Sophie ran up and hugged both of them, and Claire's parents joined them, and soon they were surrounded by people wanting to share their own stories of how they'd been helped or how they'd helped others. Later, as they helped clean up, Brett's co-worker Amanda pulled him aside. I just want you to know, you inspire me. Watching you work hard and treat everyone with respect and use your success to help others, it makes me want to be better too. Thank you for that. It was the 20th such comment Brett had received that night, and each one filled him with humility and gratitude. This was what success looked like, he realized. Not money or status or climbing a ladder. Success was touching lives, creating opportunity, building community. Success was being the person others could count on. As they left the community center that night, Sophie holding both Brett's and Claire's hands between them, swinging and laughing, Brett felt complete in a way he never had before. His family had grown beyond just him and Sophie. It now included Claire, her family, his co-workers, the foundation staff, the people they'd helped who were now helping others. They were a community, woven together by choice after choice to show up, to care, to make things better. And it had all started with one man deciding to save a stranger in an earthquake. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was dig through rubble when the ground was still shaking. Sometimes it was accepting help when you needed it. Sometimes it was offering help even when you had your own struggles. But always, it was choosing kindness. Choosing to see people, to care about them, to believe that together they could build something better than anything they could build alone. That was the lesson of the earthquake. Not that disaster strikes, but that people rise. Not that things fall apart, but that community holds together. Not that we're alone in the rubble, but that someone will always dig us out if we let them. And then, if we're smart, we pick up a shovel and start digging others out too. Because that's how the cycle works. That's how kindness grows. That's how one choice becomes a movement. One act of courage becomes a community of hope. Brett looked at Claire and Sophie, at these two people who'd become his whole world, and smiled. This was just the beginning. They had so much more to build together. So many more lives to touch. So many more chances to show up and make a difference. And Brett was ready for all of it. Finally, blessedly ready. August brought unexpected turbulence to Henderson Marketing Group. Their largest client, a national retail chain, announced they were considering a merger with a company that used a different marketing firm. If the merger went through, Henderson Marketing would lose nearly 30% of their revenue. Claire called an emergency meeting with her senior team, including Brett. "We have two options," she said, her voice steady despite the stress lines around her eyes. "Fight to keep the account, or start diversifying aggressively so we're not vulnerable to one client. Ideally, we do both." Brett listened as the team debated approaches. Finally, he spoke up. "What if we use this as an opportunity to prove our value? Develop a campaign so good, so innovative, that they can't imagine working with anyone else. Show them why loyalty matters." "That's a big risk," one of the senior managers said. "We'd be putting a lot of resources into an account we might lose anyway." "But if we don't try, we definitely lose it," Brett countered. "We have nothing to lose by giving our best shot." Claire looked at him thoughtfully. "You're right. Brett, I want you to lead this pitch. Assemble your best team. You have 3 weeks to create something that reminds them why they chose us in the first place." Over the next 3 weeks, Brett barely slept. He and his team worked around the clock, developing a comprehensive strategy that would take the client's brand in a bold new direction. Rachel Thompson proved invaluable, bringing fresh ideas and tireless energy. The whole team rallied, believing in the mission. Claire checked in daily, but gave Brett space to lead. At home, he tried to maintain normalcy for Sophie, but she noticed the stress. "Daddy, are you worried about work?" she asked one night at dinner. "A little bit. We have a big challenge right now. But you'll figure it out. You always do. And Mrs. Claire is helping, right?" "She is. We're a good team." "The best team," Sophie agreed confidently. The day of the presentation arrived. Brett and his team presented to the client's executive board in a conference room at Henderson Marketing's office. Claire sat in the back, there for support but letting Brett shine. For 90 minutes, Brett laid out their vision. He was confident, articulate, passionate. He showed them data and creativity in equal measure. When he finished, the client executives sat in silence for a long moment. "That was impressive," the CEO finally said. "Really impressive. But we need to think about this. We'll have our decision in 2 weeks." 2 weeks. Brett felt like he'd been holding his breath and would have to keep holding it for 2 more weeks. That night, Claire came over to Brett's apartment. Sophie was at a sleepover with friends, so they had the rare luxury of time alone. "You did everything you could," Claire said as they sat on his couch with takeout containers between them. "That presentation was brilliant. Now we wait and see. What if we lose them? What happens to the company? We adjust. We find new clients. We keep doing good work." She took his hand. "Brett, I built this company from nothing once. If I have to rebuild parts of it, I will. We will. Together. You're so calm about this." "I'm terrified. But I've learned that panicking doesn't help. Action helps. And right now, the action is to wait and trust that we did our best." Brett pulled her close, grateful for her steadiness. "When did you become the calm one? I remember you being the one stuck in the rubble." Claire laughed. "You've been a good influence on me. You taught me about staying calm in a crisis." They spent the evening talking about everything except work. About Sophie's upcoming school year, about a vacation they were planning, about small daily things that mattered more than big business deals. It reminded Brett what was really important. The 2 weeks of waiting were torture. Brett threw himself into other accounts, making sure the rest of the business stayed strong. Rachel proved herself again and again, and Brett started mentoring her the way Claire had mentored him. the cycle continuing. Finally, the call came. The retail chain CEO asked to meet with Claire and Brett. They went together, both trying to read the executive's expression as they sat in her office. "I'm going to be honest with you," the CEO said. "Your presentation was exceptional. It showed creativity and strategic thinking we haven't seen from other firms. But the merger creates financial pressure to consolidate vendors." Brett's heart sank. They were losing the account. "However," the CEO continued, "your pitch reminded our team why we chose Henderson Marketing in the first place. You understand our brand. You care about our success, not just billable hours. So we've decided to keep you on, merger or not. In fact, we're increasing our budget. We want you to implement the strategy you presented." Brett and Claire exchanged shocked looks. They'd won. Not just kept the account, but expanded it. "Thank you," Claire said, her voice steady despite her emotion. "We won't let you down. You never have. That's why we're staying." In the car afterward, Claire let out a whoop of joy and hugged Brett tight. "We did it. Brett, you did it. That pitch saved the account. We did it together. The whole team." They drove back to the office where the team was nervously waiting. When Brett and Claire walked in smiling, everyone erupted in cheers. Rachel hugged Brett, Amanda high-fived him, even the normally reserved IT guy pumped his fist. "Team meeting in the conference room," Claire announced. "Now." When everyone was gathered, Claire addressed them. "I want to thank every person who worked on this pitch. You showed what Henderson Marketing is capable of when we come together. Brett, stand up." Brett reluctantly stood as Claire continued. Brett led this effort with vision and determination. He believed in us even when the situation looked impossible. So I'm promoting him to Senior Account Manager, with oversight of our 3 largest accounts. Brett, you've earned this 10 times over. More cheers. Brett felt overwhelmed by gratitude and pride. He thought about where he'd been a year ago, desperate and struggling. Now he was standing in front of a team that respected him, working for a company he believed in, with a woman he loved looking at him like he'd hung the moon. That weekend, they celebrated with both families. Sophie wore a fancy dress she'd picked out herself, feeling very grown up at the dinner. Claire's parents toasted Brett's promotion. Brett's neighbors, including Mrs. Patterson, came to share the joy. "I knew from the day I met you that you were going somewhere," Mrs. Patterson told Brett. "You just needed someone to give you a chance. I'm so proud of you, dear." Sophie gave a speech, which mostly consisted of her saying "my daddy is the best" over and over, but it made everyone laugh and Brett too up. Late in the evening, Claire found Brett alone on his balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Hiding from your own party. Just taking a moment to appreciate it all. A year ago, if someone had told me this would be my life, I wouldn't have believed them." Claire joined him at the railing. "You've worked hard for everything you have. And I've had help. So much help. From you, from the team, from the community. I couldn't have done any of this alone. That's the point, though. None of us do anything alone. We're all connected, all lifting each other up. You lifted me out of that rubble. I helped lift you into a career. Now you're lifting up Rachel and others. That's how it's supposed to work." Brett turned to face her. "Claire, I've been thinking. About us, about the future. I know we've been taking things slow, being careful. But I don't want to be careful anymore. I want to be all in. With you, with this life we're building together." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I want you to be part of my family, officially. I'm saying." He took a breath. "I'm saying that when the time is right, I want to marry you." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Brett Morgan, are you proposing to me at your own promotion party?" "No. I'm telling you my intentions. The actual proposal will be much more romantic. I'm just letting you know it's coming, so you can think about whether you'd say yes." "I don't need to think about it. The answer is yes. Whenever you ask, however you ask, the answer will be yes." They kissed as the sounds of the party drifted out from inside, their family and friends laughing and celebrating. This was what happiness looked like, Brett thought. Not perfection, but connection. Not ease, but support through the hard times. Not solitude, but community. Inside, Sophie was showing Claire's nephew a drawing she'd made. It was of 3 stick figures holding hands, labeled Daddy, me, and Claire. Under it she'd written in careful letters, "My family." When Brett and Claire came back inside, Sophie showed them the picture proudly. "This is us," she announced. "We're family now, right?" Brett and Claire exchanged glances, then both crouched down to Sophie's level. "Yes, sweetheart," Brett said. "We're a family." "The best family," Claire added, pulling Sophie into a hug. And looking around the room at all the people who'd shown up to celebrate with them, Brett knew it was true. They were family, all of them. Bound not by blood but by choice, by kindness, by showing up for each other again and again. The crisis with the client had been a test, and they'd passed. But Brett knew there would be more tests to come. More challenges, more obstacles, more moments when they'd have to choose between the easy path and the right one. But he wasn't worried. They'd face it all together, just like they'd faced everything else. With courage, with kindness, with an unwavering belief that good things came to people who did good things. The earthquake had shaken everything apart. But from the rubble, they'd built something stronger than anything that had stood there before. A community, a family, a future built on the simple, powerful act of helping each other rise. And they were just getting started. September arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the kind of late summer heat that made everyone long for fall. Brett and Claire had settled into a comfortable rhythm, balancing work, family time, and their relationship. Sophie started 3rd grade, excited to tell her teacher all about her new family that included Claire. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-September, the ground shook again. Brett was in a meeting with Rachel and another coordinator when the building started to tremble. It was nowhere near as severe as the earthquake a year ago, but the memory was fresh enough that panic rippled through the office. Everyone under desks. Claire's voice cut through the confusion, calm but commanding. "Now." The shaking lasted only 10 seconds, but it felt longer. When it stopped, Claire quickly organized an evacuation, leading everyone down the stairs and out to the street. No one was hurt, and the building appeared undamaged, but the aftershock had rattled everyone. Brett's first thought was Sophie. He grabbed his phone and called her school, hands shaking. The line was busy. He tried again. And again. "Brett." Claire grabbed his arm. "The school has protocols. She's fine. But I'll drive you there right now. Come on." They made it to Sophie's school in 15 minutes that felt like hours. Parents crowded the pickup area, everyone having had the same panic thought. Brett pushed through the crowd until he found Sophie's teacher, and there was Sophie, sitting calmly with her class on the playground. "Daddy." She ran to him, and Brett scooped her up, holding her tight despite the fact that she was really getting too big to be carried. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're okay. You're okay." "I wasn't scared," Sophie said into his shoulder. "Mrs. Davis had us practice what to do. We went under our desks just like we learned. It was easy." Brett's heart rate slowly returned to normal. He set Sophie down and crouched to her level. "You were very brave." "Are you okay, Daddy? You look scared." "I am scared. But now that I see you're safe, I feel better." Claire knelt beside them. "Sophie, your dad and I need to go check on our office building and make sure everyone's okay there. Would it be all right if Mrs. Patterson picks you up and stays with you until we get home?" Sophie nodded. "Is your building okay?" "We think so, but we need to make sure. And we need to check on all our employees. You understand? You have to take care of your work family like Daddy takes care of me." "Exactly right." Mrs. Patterson arrived within 20 minutes, and Brett felt guilty leaving Sophie, but knew Claire was right. They had responsibilities to their team. As they drove back downtown, Brett's phone kept buzzing with texts from employees checking in, from clients asking about business continuity, from Foundation board members coordinating response efforts. "It's starting again," Brett said quietly. "What is?" "The chaos. The fear. People are going to need help, and we're going to have to figure out how to provide it while also keeping the business running." Claire reached over and squeezed his hand. "We'll handle it. We've been through worse." The aftershock had triggered evacuations across downtown Portland. Building inspectors were stretched thin, trying to assess damage. Some areas had power outages. The hospital reported minor injuries but nothing serious. By evening, it was clear the aftershock hadn't caused major structural damage, but it had triggered something else: panic. People who'd been traumatized by the original earthquake were reliving that fear. The crisis hotlines were overwhelmed. Shelters filled with people too afraid to go back to their apartments. The Riverside Community Foundation activated its emergency response plan, and Patricia called an urgent board meeting for the next morning. Brett and Claire attended, both exhausted but determined. "We need to provide immediate support," Patricia said. "Mental health resources, temporary shelter, reassurance. Brett, can Henderson Marketing help us coordinate outreach?" "Absolutely. We'll waive our fees and dedicate whatever resources you need." Over the next week, Brett coordinated a team effort that mobilized not just his company but a network of businesses and organizations. They created a rapid response campaign, connecting frightened residents with services. They set up a helpline. They organized community meetings where experts could address fears and provide information. Claire worked beside him, the two of them falling into a partnership that felt effortless despite the high pressure. Rachel proved her worth again, working 16-hour days to help coordinate volunteers. Sophie, sensing the stress, tried to help in her own way. She created drawings for families in the shelters, cheerful pictures of sunshine and rainbows and messages like "You are brave" and "Everything will be okay." "Can we take these to the people who are scared?" she asked Brett one evening. The next day, he and Claire brought Sophie to the main shelter. Watching his daughter hand out her drawings, seeing the smiles they brought to stressed and frightened faces, Brett felt overwhelmed with pride. "She has your heart," Claire whispered. "She has both our hearts now," Brett replied. But the sustained crisis was taking its toll. Brett was running on too little sleep and too much coffee. Claire pushed herself even harder, refusing to rest when so many people needed help. One evening, as they worked late at the office coordinating the next day's outreach efforts, Claire suddenly stood up from her desk and swayed. "Claire!" Brett caught her as her legs gave out. "I'm fine. Just stood up too fast." But she wasn't fine. She was pale and trembling, clearly exhausted beyond the point of functioning. Brett guided her to the couch in her office. "When did you last eat?" I don't remember." "Claire, you can't help anyone if you collapse. Come on. We're going to get you home, get food in you, and you're going to rest." "But there's so much to do. And it will still be there tomorrow. The team can handle tonight. You need to take care of yourself." He drove her to his apartment, closer than her house, and made her sit while he heated up soup. Sophie was already asleep, and Mrs. Patterson had left a note saying everything was fine. Claire ate mechanically, and Brett could see her fighting exhaustion. "Stay here tonight," he said. "Sophie's bed has a trundle. I'll sleep there, you can have my bed. You're too tired to drive home." She didn't argue, which told him how exhausted she really was. He helped her to his room, found her one of his t-shirts to sleep in, and made sure she was settled before returning to the living room. But 20 minutes later, Claire appeared in the doorway. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that rubble. The aftershock triggered something in me. All the feelings from that day came flooding back." Brett went to her immediately. "Come here." He led her to the couch and pulled her close, letting her rest against his chest. "You're safe. You're here with me. Nothing's going to happen to you. I promise." "I've been so focused on helping everyone else deal with their trauma, I forgot I have my own." Seeing everyone panic during the aftershock, having to stay calm and lead, it brought everything back. "You don't always have to be the strong one, Claire. You're allowed to be scared too." She cried then, finally releasing the tension she'd been carrying. Brett held her, stroking her hair, murmuring reassurance. Eventually, she fell asleep against him, and he carefully shifted so they were both lying on the couch, Claire curled into his side. That's where Sophie found them in the morning, both still in their work clothes, asleep on the couch. She didn't wake them, just covered them with a blanket and ate her cereal quietly, then went to play in her room. When Brett woke an hour later, Claire was still sleeping, looking peaceful for the first time in days. He carefully extracted himself and found Sophie. "Good morning, sweetheart. Thank you for being so quiet." Mrs. Clare looked tired. "She needs rest to help people, right?" "Right. You're very thoughtful." Claire emerged an hour later, looking embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall apart on you." "You didn't fall apart. You're human, and you needed someone to take care of you for a change." Brett handed her a cup of coffee. "From now on, we do this together. All of it. And we take breaks when we need to. Deal?" "Deal." Over the next few days, they found a better balance. They delegated more, trusted their team, took actual breaks. The community response continued, but in a more sustainable way. By early October, the crisis had stabilized. People were returning to their routines. The shelters emptied as residents found the courage to go home. The Foundation's helpline saw fewer calls each day. At the next board meeting, Patricia praised Brett and Claire's coordination efforts. "You two were remarkable. Calm, organized, compassionate. You probably prevented a much larger crisis by acting so quickly." "We had a great team," Brett said. "Everyone stepped up." After the meeting, Claire pulled Brett aside. "I want to talk to you about something. That night at your apartment, when I broke down, I realized something. I'm tired of going home to an empty house. I'm tired of us maintaining separate lives when we're building a shared one. Brett, how would you feel about us living together?" Brett's heart rate picked up. "Are you sure? That's a big step." "I'm sure. I love you. I love Sophie. I want to be part of your daily life, not just the weekends and evenings. I want to be there for the homework and the bedtime stories and the regular Tuesday nights. I want us to be a real family." "I want that too. But what about work? People will talk." "Let them talk. We've proven we can maintain professional boundaries. And honestly, at this point, I don't care what anyone thinks. Life is too short and too uncertain. The aftershock reminded me of that. I want to spend my life with you and Sophie, and I don't want to wait anymore." Brett pulled her into his arms. "Then let's do it. Let's find a place together. Start the next chapter." That evening, they told Sophie together. Her reaction was pure joy. "Really? Mrs. Clare is going to live with us? All the time?" "All the time," Claire confirmed. "If that's okay with you." "It's better than okay. It's the best thing ever. Can we get a dog too?" Brett and Claire laughed. "We'll talk about the dog," Brett said. Over the next month, they house hunted, finally finding a beautiful 3-bedroom home in a family-friendly neighborhood. It had a yard for Sophie to play in, an office space for Brett and Claire to work from home when needed, and was close to both Sophie's school and their office. With the best view as her bedroom, Brett and Claire unpacked boxes side by side, building their shared life piece by piece. That night, after Sophie was tucked into her new room, Brett and Claire stood on their back porch looking at the stars. "This is everything I never knew I wanted," Claire said softly. "A home, a family, a sense of belonging." "Me too. I spent so long just trying to survive, I forgot what it felt like to actually live. To dream about the future instead of just worrying about it. We've come so far from that day in the earthquake." "We have. And we still have so far to go. Together." They stood there in the cool October night, wrapped in each other's arms, grateful for the journey that had brought them here. The aftershock had been scary, a reminder of trauma and vulnerability. But it had also been a gift in its own way, showing them what mattered most and pushing them to stop hesitating about the life they wanted to build. Inside, Sophie slept peacefully in her new room, surrounded by unpacked boxes and dreams of her new life. Outside, Brett and Claire held each other close, two people who'd saved each other in more ways than one. The storms had passed, but they'd weathered them together. And whatever storms came next, they'd face those together too. Because that's what families did. That's what love meant. That's what community was all about. One choice at a time. One act of kindness building on another. Until they created something beautiful and lasting and true. The peace they'd been searching for wasn't the absence of challenges. It was the presence of people who wouldn't let you face those challenges alone. And Brett and Claire had found that peace in each other, in Sophie, in the community they'd helped build. Now they just had to hold on to it, nurture it, let it grow into something even stronger. And they would. Together, they would. December brought the first real snow Portland had seen in years. Fat, white flakes fell gently on the city, transforming everything into a winter scene. Brett stood at the kitchen window of their home, coffee in hand, watching Sophie make snow angels in the backyard. Claire came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" "About how different this year's holidays are from last year. Remember last Christmas Eve at your parents' house? How nervous I was." "You were adorable. Sophie asked you if you thought I was pretty, and you nearly drove off the road." Brett laughed at the memory. "This year feels different. Settled. Like we've finally found where we're supposed to be." "That's because we have." Claire kissed his shoulder. "Speaking of which, I have something to tell you. I was going to wait until Christmas, but I can't hold it in anymore." Brett turned to face her. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Brett's eyes widened, then filled with tears. "Really? You're sure?" "I took 3 tests. Very sure. We're having a baby, Brett. Our baby." He pulled her into a tight embrace, overwhelmed with emotion. They talked about having children together, but neither expected it to happen so quickly. "Sophie's going to lose her mind," he said, laughing through tears. "I know. Should we tell her now?" They bundled up and went outside, where Sophie was attempting to build a snowman with limited success. When she saw their faces, she stopped. "What's wrong? Why are you both crying?" "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart," Brett said, crouching down beside her. "Something very right, actually. Claire and I have some news. You're going to be a big sister." Sophie's mouth dropped open. "A baby? A real baby?" "A real baby," Claire confirmed. "You'll have a little brother or sister next summer." Sophie screamed with joy and threw herself at both of them, nearly knocking them over. "This is the best day ever. Can we name the baby? Can I teach the baby things? Will the baby sleep in my room?" They spent the next hour in the snow, answering Sophie's endless questions and celebrating as a family. When they finally went inside, cold and wet and happy, Brett caught Claire's eye over Sophie's head. This was it. This was a life they'd built from rubble and kindness and choice after choice to show up for each other. The news spread quickly once they started telling people. Claire's parents cried happy tears. Brett's co-workers threw an impromptu celebration at the office. Mrs. Patterson knitted tiny booties. The community that had supported them through crisis now celebrated their joy. On Christmas morning, Brett woke early to find Claire already up, standing in what would become the nursery. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Too excited. Too grateful. Too overwhelmed by how good life is right now." She leaned into him when he wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Do you remember what you said to Sophie once? About how one choice can change everything?" "I remember. That choice you made during the earthquake, that decision to save me instead of going to your interview, it didn't just save my life. It gave us this life, this family, this home, this future we're building. Everything good in my world right now traces back to that moment. Everything good in mine traces back to you giving me a chance when you didn't have to." "We saved each other," Claire said simply. "In every way that matters." Downstairs, they heard Sophie wake up and shriek with excitement about Christmas. Brett and Claire smiled at each other and went to join her, ready to celebrate their first Christmas morning as a complete family. January brought a new challenge at Henderson Marketing. A major competitor tried to poach several of their best employees with higher salaries. Claire called an all-hands meeting to address it. "I know other firms are making offers," she said to the assembled team. "And I want to be clear, I will never hold anyone back from pursuing better opportunities. But I want to remind you why we're here. Henderson Marketing isn't just about profit. It's about doing work that matters, building relationships that last, creating a culture where people take care of each other. Yes, you might make more money somewhere else. But will you feel as valued? Will you be proud of the work you do? Will your colleagues show up for you when times get hard?" She paused, looking around the room. "I've built this company on the belief that if we take care of our people, they'll take care of our clients, and success will follow. I still believe that. So if you're thinking about leaving, I understand. But I hope you'll remember what we've built here together. The question isn't just what salary you can earn. It's what kind of life you want to live, and who you want to live it with. Brett watched the team's faces as Claire spoke. He saw heads nodding, people exchanging glances, the visible shift as her words landed. By the end of the week, every employee who'd been approached by the competitor had decided to stay. "You're a remarkable leader," Brett told Claire that evening. "You didn't have to give that speech. You could have just matched their salaries. Money isn't why people stay. Purpose is. Connection is. Feeling like they matter. That's what keeps people." She smiled. "You taught me that, actually. You stayed at Henderson not because of the salary, but because you believed in what we were doing. That's the culture I want to maintain." In February, the Riverside Community Foundation hosted its annual fundraiser, and Brett was asked to speak about the job training program he'd helped launch. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of supporters, he thought about Rachel Thompson, who was now managing her own accounts successfully, about the dozens of other program graduates who'd found meaningful work, about the ripple effect of opportunity. "A year and a half ago, I was one of the people this foundation serves," Brett began. "I needed help, needed a chance, needed someone to believe in me. The foundation didn't just provide resources. They provided hope. They reminded me that struggling doesn't mean failing, and asking for help isn't weakness, it's courage." He paused. "Today, I'm here as a donor, a board member, and living proof that your support changes lives. Not just for the people you serve directly, but for their families, their communities, everyone they'll help in turn. Thank you for believing in second chances. Thank you for creating opportunity. Thank you for remembering that we're all connected, and helping one person helps us all." The speech received a standing ovation. Patricia hugged him afterward, tears in her eyes. "You've become the face of what we do here. The perfect example of transformation and giving back." That night, as Brett and Claire drove home, Claire said, "You know what I love most about watching you succeed? You never forget where you came from. You stay humble and grateful even as you grow. That's rare." "How could I forget? I see reminders everywhere. In Rachel's determination, in the families we help, in Sophie's questions about why some people need help. And mostly in you, in what you did for me when you didn't have to." March brought warm spring weather and preparations for the baby's arrival. They painted the nursery a soft yellow, assembled furniture, and picked out names. Sophie was involved in every decision, taking her role as big sister seriously. "I think we should name the baby Hope," she announced one evening at dinner. "Because that's what Daddy says Mrs. Claire gave us. Hope for a better future." Brett and Claire exchanged glances. "Hope is beautiful," Claire said carefully. "But what if the baby is a boy?" Sophie considered this. "Then hope for a girl, and chance for a boy. Because you both gave each other a chance." "Chance Morgan Henderson," Brett said slowly. "Actually, that's not bad." "Hope Morgan Henderson," Claire added, smiling. "I like them both." In April, Henderson Marketing celebrated its best quarter ever. Claire announced bonuses for everyone and created a profit-sharing program to thank the team for their loyalty. "We've grown because of your dedication," she told the staff. "You believed in our mission, stayed when others tried to lure you away, and worked hard even during crisis. This success belongs to all of us." That evening, Brett found Rachel packing up a desk, tears streaming down her face. "Rachel? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. My bonus is enough to move my son and me out of our studio apartment. We're getting a real two-bedroom place. He'll have his own room for the first time in his life." She wiped her eyes. "Brett, when you vouched for me, when you gave me this chance, I don't think you know what it meant. I was ready to give up. I thought I'd never be able to provide a good life for my son. But you saw something in me, just like Claire saw something in you. And now look at us. We made it." Brett hugged her. "You made it through your own hard work. I just helped open a door. You walked through it. That's what makes you a good leader. You don't take credit for other people's success. You help create conditions for them to succeed, then celebrate their achievement." Rachel smiled through her tears. I'm going to do that too. Pay it forward. Help someone else the way you helped me. That's the whole point. That's how we make sure the kindness keeps spreading. May brought Sophie's 9th birthday and a surprise party that filled their home with laughter and chaos. Sophie's friends from school mixed with Claire's family and Brett's colleagues, everyone coming together to celebrate. As Brett watched Sophie blow out her candles, surrounded by people who loved her, he thought about her 8th birthday. They'd celebrated in their tiny apartment with store-bought cake, and no guest because Brett couldn't afford anything more. Sophie had insisted she didn't mind, but he'd seen the longing in her eyes when she talked about her friends' parties. Now she had everything he'd wanted to give her. Not just material things, but security, community, love from a family that kept growing. She had Claire, who treated her like her own daughter. She had a baby sibling on the way. She had friends and opportunities and a future bright with possibility. Make a wish, Claire prompted Sophie. Sophie closed her eyes tight, then blew out all 9 candles in one breath. Everyone cheered. Later, Brett asked what she'd wished for. I can't tell you or it won't come true, Sophie said seriously. Then she whispered, but it was about our family staying happy forever. That's a good wish, sweetheart. It's going to come true. I know it will. Because we help each other and love each other, and that's the magic that makes good things happen. Out of the mouths of children, Brett thought. She'd figured out the secret that many adults never learned. In early June, Claire went into labor 3 weeks early. Brett rushed her to the hospital, while Mrs. Patterson stayed with Sophie. The labor was quick and uncomplicated, and at 3:47 in the morning on June 12th, they welcomed a healthy baby boy. Chance Robert Morgan Henderson, Brett said softly, holding his son for the first time. Robert was after Brett's father, who'd passed away when Brett was young but had taught him about kindness and integrity. Claire watched them, exhausted but radiant. He's perfect. He really is. Sophie met her baby brother later that morning, approaching with careful reverence. He's so tiny, she whispered. Can I touch him? Of course. You're his big sister. He's going to look up to you. Sophie gently stroked Chance's tiny hand, and he wrapped his fingers around hers. Hi, baby Chance. I'm Sophie. I'm going to teach you lots of things and help take care of you and love you forever. Brett's eyes filled with tears watching them. His family. His beautiful, unexpected, miraculous family, built from crisis and choice, and an unwavering belief in the power of kindness. They brought Chance home 2 days later to a house filled with flowers and meals from friends. The community that had supported them through every challenge now celebrated their joy. Over the summer, as Brett and Claire adjusted to life with a newborn, the business continued to thrive. Rachel was promoted to senior coordinator. The Seattle office expanded. New clients sought them out based on their reputation for doing meaningful work. In August, on the 2-year anniversary of the earthquake, the city held a memorial ceremony. Brett and Claire attended with Sophie, leaving Chance home with Claire's mother. They stood in the memorial plaza, listening to survivors share stories of loss and recovery. When it was time for community members to speak, Patricia called Brett to the front. I didn't prepare anything, Brett protested. Just speak from the heart. That's all anyone needs. Brett took the microphone, looking out at the crowd of familiar faces. People he'd helped, people who'd helped him, people who'd become family through shared experience. 2 years ago, I made a choice that changed my life, he began. I chose to help a stranger instead of pursuing my own goals. At the time, it felt like it cost me everything. But what I didn't understand then was that choosing kindness is never really a cost. It's an investment in the kind of world we want to live in, the kind of community we want to be part of, the kind of people we want to become. He paused, finding Claire in the crowd. She was crying, smiling at him through tears. That stranger I helped became my partner, my love, my family. She gave me opportunities one never dreamed possible. Together, we've tried to pay that kindness forward, creating chances for others the way we were given chances. And every person we've helped has gone on to help others, creating this beautiful chain of connection and care. Brett's voice grew stronger. The earthquake destroyed buildings and disrupted lives. But it also revealed something important. We're stronger together than we ever could be alone. The rebuilding that happened here wasn't just about fixing structures. It was about building community, about remembering that we belong to each other, that we have a responsibility to lift each other up. He looked around at the faces watching him. So today, as we remember what we lost, let's also celebrate what we found. We found each other. We found our capacity for generosity and courage. We found that choosing to help, choosing to care, choosing to show up for each other, that's not a burden. It's a privilege. It's what makes us human. It's what makes life worth living. The crowd erupted in applause. Brett stepped down, immediately wrapped in Claire's embrace. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "Perfect." Sophie tugged on his hand. "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to help people like you and Mrs. Claire do." "You already do, sweetheart. Every day, you already do." That evening, as they put Sophie to bed and settled Chance in his crib, Brett and Claire sat on their back porch under the stars. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things had gone differently?" Claire asked. "If you'd made it to your interview that day? If I'd been trapped under the rubble alone?" "Sometimes. But I can't imagine any other path leading here, to this life, to this family. Everything that happened, even the hard parts, was necessary to get us where we are." "You know what scares me?" Claire said softly. "How close we came to missing each other. If the earthquake had hit 5 minutes earlier or later, if you'd taken a different street, if I'd been anywhere else. But we didn't miss each other. That's what matters. We found each other at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way. And we chose each other, again and again, every day since then." "Promise me something," Claire said, taking his hand. "Promise me we'll never stop choosing each other. Even when things get hard, even when we're tired or frustrated or overwhelmed. Promise me we'll remember this feeling, this gratitude for what we've built." "I promise. Always." Brett kissed her hand. "You and Sophie and Chance, you're my everything. The life we're building together, the family we've become, the future we're creating, it's more than I ever thought possible. And I will never, ever take it for granted." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their neighborhood settling in for the night. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. A car drove past. The normal, beautiful sounds of everyday life. Inside, Sophie dreamed of being a big sister. Chance slept peacefully in his crib. Their home held the warmth and love of a family that had been forged in crisis but was thriving in peace. Brett thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago. Desperate, struggling, convinced his life would always be about barely getting by. That man couldn't have imagined this future. Couldn't have dreamed he'd be sitting on his own back porch, in a home he owned with a woman he loved, listening to his children breathe peacefully inside. But that man had made one choice that changed everything. He'd chosen to help when helping seemed impossible. He'd chosen kindness over convenience, compassion over self-interest, humanity over opportunity. And from that one choice, everything else had followed. The job, the relationship, the family, the community, the purpose. One act of courage rippling outward, touching countless lives, creating waves of generosity that was still spreading. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked. "About how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop when everyone else is running. How the most important moments are often the ones where we choose to help instead of helping ourselves. How one decision can change not just your life, but the lives of everyone you touch. You changed my life. You changed mine right back." Brett pulled her close. "We saved each other, Claire. In every way that matters, we saved each other. And we'll keep saving each other. Every day, in small ways and big ones. That's what love is. That's what family is. That's what community is. That's what life is supposed to be." They sat under the stars, two people who'd found each other in the rubble and built something beautiful from the broken pieces. Two people who'd learned that kindness wasn't weakness, that accepting help wasn't failure, that giving back wasn't obligation but joy. Two people who discovered that the best things in life came not from pursuing your own dreams, but from stopping to help someone else pursue theirs. Because in helping others, you found yourself. In giving, you received. In choosing love, you created something that could never be destroyed. The earthquake had shaken everything apart. But from those broken pieces, they'd built something stronger than stone or steel. They'd built a family. They'd built a community. They'd built a life founded on the simple, powerful truth that we're all connected, and choosing to honor that connection was the most important choice anyone could make. Brett looked at the stars and thought about all the people whose choices had brought him here. The stranger who'd called 911 during the earthquake. Mrs. Patterson who'd given him money when he needed it. Patricia who'd invited him to join the foundation board. Rachel who'd worked hard and proved herself. Every single person who'd shown up, who'd helped, who'd chosen kindness. And he thought about all the people he'd helped in turn, all the lives he'd touched, all the opportunities he'd created. The cycle continuing, the ripples spreading, the simple act of caring multiplying into something magnificent. This was success, he thought. Not money or status or recognition, but this. Love and family and purpose and community. This feeling of being exactly where you belonged, with exactly the people you were meant to be with, doing exactly what you were meant to do. This was what happened when you chose kindness. When you stopped running toward your own goals long enough to help someone else reach theirs. When you believed that the best way to build your own future was to invest in someone else's. This was the life that came from one choice, one moment, one decision to do the right thing even when it cost you everything you thought you wanted. And it was more beautiful, more fulfilling, more deeply satisfying than anything Brett could have achieved on his own. Ready to go in? Claire asked. In a minute. I just want to sit here a little longer and appreciate it all. I love you, Brett Morgan. I love you too, Claire Henderson. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for seeing something in me worth investing in. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for saving me. In the rubble that day, and every day since then. Thank you for teaching me what matters. Thank you for being exactly who you are. They sat under the stars a while longer, holding hands, grateful for everything that had brought them to this moment. Two people who'd saved each other. Two people who'd chosen to build something beautiful from broken pieces. Two people who'd learned that the greatest gift you could give was simply showing up, caring, helping, loving. The earthquake was 2 years in the past, but its lessons would last forever. Community matters. Kindness multiplies. Courage means stopping when everyone else runs. Success means lifting others as you climb. Family is who shows up when you need them. Love is choosing each other, again and again, through every challenge and celebration. And sometimes, the most important moment of your life happens in an instant. A choice between two paths. A decision that seems small but changes everything. A single act of kindness that ripples outward, touching countless lives, creating waves of goodness that never stop spreading. Brett had made that choice 2 years ago, and he would keep making it, every day, for the rest of his life. The choice to help. The choice to care. The choice to show up. The choice to love. Because that was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to be alive. That was what it meant to build a life worth living. One choice at a time. One act of kindness building on another. Until you looked around and realized you'd created something beautiful. Something lasting. Something true. Something that started with saving a stranger and ended with finding yourself. With finding your family. With finding your purpose. With finding home. And Brett was home. Finally, completely, gratefully home.